Today is Friday, July 19th, 2019, and the location of the interview is the Veterans Counseling Center in Walla Walla, Washington. I am interviewing Gil Alden, a veteran, and he left the service, I believe the United States Navy, as a, I should let you answer that.
Yeah, I left as a second-class petty officer. I had been assigned to the United States Navy Presidential Honor Guard.
Excellent. Thank you for answering that for me.
And I'm glad to do it.
and Dixie Ferguson and Vic Phillips, a videographer, are conducting the interview today. We represent the Blue Mountain chapter of the American Red Cross in Walla Walla, Washington, and Gil was born March 10th, 1960. So, once again, Gil, if you were in war, what war era and branch of service did you serve?
I served in the U.S. Navy, and I would have been right at the tail end of the Vietnam War had it been continuing.
Mm-hmm. All right.
It wasn't. It had been over, for all intents and purposes, the Vietnam War started in 1975. Ended in 1975, and I joined in 79. So.
Uh-huh. Excellent. And again, if you'll just state the rank that you were upon leaving the service.
I was a second-class petty officer. I was a machinist mate, second class.
All right. And they have many classifications.
That's right. Yes, yes.
And where were you born, Gil?
I was born Salem, Oregon.
Okay, Salem. And so I just want to go back a little bit. You went all through high school, grammar school and high school in Salem?
Yes, graduated in 1978 from McNary High School, Salem, Oregon.
And you enlisted in the service?
Yes, I worked for, I don't know, maybe, well, after I graduated, by fall, I'd landed a job with the Glidden Paint Company up in Portland. I moved from Salem up to Portland, so I was up there.
All right. And something drew you to the service and why you chose the Navy?
I was drawn to the service probably when I was a 5-year-old kid. My father had been an officer in the Army, and I guess I've had red, white, and blue running through my veins since then. I had an interest, always have had an interest in the ocean and ships. I saw some movies. I read about the Battle of Midway. I read about John F. Kennedy and PT 109, and I said, that's it. I was in a neighborhood, most of my contemporaries who all joined the Marines, because John Wayne, Sands of Iwo Jima, every summer, you go down to the state fair and there's the Marine and he's got his pull-up bar. Let me see how many you can give me and all this kind of stuff. And there's the Navy with the pictures. My friends are all over here doing the Marine Corps thing. I'm over here looking at the Navy ship, and thinking about its heritage. USS Constitution also was a big thing for me. I remember that ship. I read some history on it and I said, yeah, John Paul Jones, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, I'm going to be in the
Navy. you had no choice but the Navy.
That's it, yes.
in your blood. Well, and your father, what did he think about that choice?
He thought it was fine.
Great.
He didn't have any problem with me not becoming a ground pounder in the Army. He thought the Navy was fine.
I am curious about your dad. Did he serve in any wartime?
Yes, he did. He fought the Japanese in the Southwest Pacific in a little place called New Guinea.
Yeah.
He was a platoon leader, first lieutenant.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Did he share his stories?
Some of them. Most of them he did not. I say that my dad, Clyde Alden, is one of my heroes because he came back from war and his soul was very, very seared. He spent the rest of his life dealing with some very hard things that he shared with me.
Later on, or?
Later on. He shared some of his wartime memories with me mid-junior high on.
Yeah. But that didn't discourage you from joining the service?
Not at all.
Not at all. And so did he serve full-time military career or?
No, he could have. He could have been and that's one of his regrets. He said that he'd wanted to be a full-time career officer, but of course he was married to my mom, family, that kind of thing. He was a reservist. But his active duty military was during World War II. Okay.
And name your parents' names.
Clyde Wayne Alden and Mildred June Alden.
Very good. And siblings?
Gary, Greg, and Gail.
Excellent. Okay, that's a good background. So, you went down to the recruiter, signed in to the Navy, and what happened next?
In April of '79, I climbed a plane and went down to San Diego. That's where I went to boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in the airport, and you had your paperwork, and I took nothing with me. I'm not going to need anything. Maybe some chewing gum. Literally nothing. My wallet. Everybody else, I saw guys show up with bags and stuff, not me. And I went to a kiosk. It said, U.S. military reporting for active duty recruit training. And there was a chief there, Chief Petty Officer. Smile, nice looking guy. And I walked up to him and I said, I'm here to report for Navy boot camp. And the smile just disappeared from his face. And he said, you're going to walk down this hallway right here. You're going to go out that sidewalk. And you walk in that sidewalk and you see a gray bus. You're going to climb on that. On the way to that bus, you're not going to call your mom or your girlfriend or anybody else. Now get out of my sight.
And your thoughts were?
My thoughts were, welcome to the Navy.
No regrets yet.
No regrets. No, I just kind of figured, okay, that's what part of the program.
So this is the MO. Okay, so you got on that bus and away you went to
Yep.
the Naval Training?
Naval Training Center, San Diego, which has been closed now for quite some time.
Okay, and describe your first day there and what did you call it, boot camp?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, describe it all.
A blur. What was kind of funny, lots of comical occurrences in the service. And the first one happened right out of the gate. This bus is crammed full of people from all over the United States. And we're gabbing away. What do you think it's going to be like? What do you all this kind of stuff. And then a second class petty officer, who was the driver, climbs on. Dead silence. You would have think Pharaoh had climbed on that bus. You could have heard a pin drop. So we become dead silent. He drives us. Not a word is said. Oh, not a word is said. Out of the airport, all the way over the bridge, all the way over to San Diego, not a word is said. We pull up in front of this building. It's probably 10:30 at night. And he gets off.
Always at night.
Always at night. Always at night. And he gets off that bus, and he starts walking. And we don't move. Nothing. And he stops. And for emphasis, I'm sure, he slowly turns around. And we all piled off that bus, like somebody had lit a fire under us. And he, line up over there. So we line up, and there's a chief petty officer there waiting for us. Line up on this line, get in this line. I'll make a swabby out of you, boy. All this kind of stuff, So they took us through what was called R&O, receiving and outfitting. First thing that happened, you get your head shaved. Then they gave us all of our toiletry articles and self-hygiene stuff. And they said, see that barracks over there? You guys are going to go in that barracks, find a rack, and go to sleep, and we start tomorrow. And so we all started walking down there. And I figured, I'm going to run down there. I mean, the man said, get down there, so we're going to get down there. And besides that, I want to get a decent rack. So I took off, and we all took off running
you were
down there.
very gung-ho.
Yeah, if you want to call it that. And we get down there, we find a place to sleep, we go to sleep. The next day, our company commander showed up, and let me see, Aviation Chief Bosun Mate Perry and Machinist Mate 1 Walls.
You remember all this?
I remember them. I can see their face in my mind's eye, sure. Wow. And they lined us up. We're your chief petty officers. We are your trainers. We're going to be your company commanders. And when we tell you to do something, you better, and all this kind of stuff, So they show us how to fold your clothes the Navy way. They show you how to do this. They tell you what's in store for you. You do PT. Every minute of your day is accounted for.
And you're still okay.
I'm still okay with it. I'm not having a problem with this at all. I mean, this is what I expected. So away we go. And boot camp moves forward, and we start going through all our training, and we had a Blue Jackets manual we had to read. We had, I think, 12 general orders. You had to memorize those babies. They were on the back of these books they gave you, kind of like a syllabus book they give you in college. And you get your uniforms. They issue that, all that stuff, And all your civilian stuff is put in a little tiny package. And you're not going to see that till in the boot camp. So away that goes.
So you didn't need anything after all.
No, yeah, 3 hots in a cot, and every, all your shaving and everything else needs, and the whole shebang. And you got these 2 wonderful guys that are telling you how to be sailors. And in no uncertain terms, they want you to understand who's in charge. And in no uncertain terms, we understood quite well. Thank you very much.
And how long was each day?
Each day was probably about a 12 to 13-hour day.
Did I hear marching in there?
Oh yeah, we marched everywhere. We had PT a couple times a day. And PT also included how does one put it? Some motivational exhortations when we weren't doing things just the way they want to be done. So we got to kiss the deck a lot and do push-ups and all that kind of stuff. And
Wait, the deck, were you on, did you go on ship?
No, I was, the deck, we learned a whole new terminology. The floor is the deck, the ceiling's the overhead, the wall's a bulkhead, a door's a hatch, a drinking fountain is a scuttlebutt, the restroom is the head, and on it went. Yeah, all Navy talk. You learned all that stuff.
Okay. What was the mood amongst you guys?
Stress and fear. We want to get the job done right, you know, not get in too much trouble. Try to please these guys who seem to have no sense of humor at all. Yeah.
And any communication with home at all?
By writing. This was in the 79, the internet was non-existent, cell phones were non-existent. And part of the gear they gave you in receiving an outfitting was this big stack of envelopes, and they gave you some stamps, and they gave you some Navy stationery. So you could write home and say, yeah, I'm here, and everything's fine, and boy, you wouldn't believe the food and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Were you homesick?
No, not at all.
And what, early on, what was your dream being in the Navy?
At that point, I simply wanted to do well in boot camp. Of course, a little bit later, I said, I'm going to make a career out of this. But there were reasons it didn't happen. But at that point in boot camp, I simply said, I want to get through this well. And I did. I came out of boot camp with 5 major awards. I was a company honor man, academic award winner. I was advanced pay grade E2. I was a company master at arms, which meant my job was to make sure all the work got done, clean the barracks and everything else. And then I was nominated for honor man of my division. And I missed that I made the first cut, but I didn't make the second one.
That's huge. That's huge.
And yeah.
How many weeks, months training down there?
10.
10
weeks. So 2 months and 2 weeks.
Okay. At the end, what is next? You did very well. What's next?
Just before graduation, I was approached by my company commanders, and they said, how would you like to be in something called the Ceremonial Guard? And I thought, it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what you want. If you want me in it, I'll be in it, you know. And so I thought it had something to do with graduation. I had no idea what it was. And they said, well, over at the base theater, you know, just a couple blocks away, they're making a presentation tonight on it. So go see it and see if you want to do this. So we show up, and this theater probably it could seat, I don't know, 400. There were maybe 150 of us there. And that was the day when they had the old 16 millimeter projectors, right? And these 2 guys were there, and they were dressed to the nines. They looked like Navy gods. This was summertime. They were in Navy whites. They had a perfectly balanced Navy kerchief. It's called a kerchief. They had a navy blue dickie. Their Dixie cup, the round hat, was perfectly proportioned. They had white gloves on. They had a big, huge belt that said U.S. Navy Ceremonial Guard on it right here, you know, shine like white gold. Their shoes were Corfram shoes. They looked like a black mirror. They had on the inside, their heels right here, there was a brass clicker, and those were shined. And these guys would walk around, click, 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 click.
They were perfect.
Holy cow. And they had these things called an agulette right here, you know. So then they showed us this film. They said, you guys are all here. You're interested in the Ceremonial Guard, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, watch the movie. So they clicked it on, and I found out that this was a U.S. Navy Presidential Ceremonial Honor Guard. And you would work at the White House, the Pentagon, the State Department, Arlington Cemetery. They showed these pictures of all these guys doing this, and I thought, now I signed up to be a fireman in the Navy, but they're offering me this. Fireman Ceremonial Guard? Where do I sign up, boys? So
very impressive.
Oh, very impressive. Yeah, especially for somebody, you know, I was, 19 years old.
Absolutely.
Rather impressionable, but it made a good impression. And I thought, work at the White House with the president? Are you really no kidding, you know? So I said, yes, I'm in. So signed the papers. I got interviewed by Naval Intelligence Service. That was the initial interview.
And why them?
Because they want to do a profile. They say, is this guy stable enough to stand next to the President of the United States? Does he have it in him to be able to do this kind of duty? And that was kind of a cursory interview, and I made it through that. And I dropped my A school, my fireman school, and so I stayed another 2 weeks in what was called apprenticeship training while I was waiting. to go on leave and then go to my first duty station, which would be U.S. Navy Ceremonial Guard, Washington, D.C.
It happened that fast, Gil?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty fast.
Wow.
And so boot camp got over. I got, I still have my boot camp annual. It's kind of like a high school annual. I have my pictures in it, and getting this award, blah, 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 blah.
President of the class.
Kind of. And they called me a dig-it. Back then, that was a term for a lifer. Yeah, Alden, he's going to be a lifer. And I said, yeah, I probably will be. I was okay with that.
Yeah.
And so after boot camp, we all went our ways, and I went back for a couple of weeks, leaving Salem, and then off to D.C. I went and got to D.C., and they came and picked us up. And we were stationed in a place called Anacostia. It's still there.
Now, wait a minute. I have to know, when you first landed in Washington, D.C., was that your first time there?
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember it vividly. We got there, I believe it was mid-fall. We were dressed in navy blues. We were way overdressed. Washington, D.C. is very hot and very humid at that time. We stayed one night at a hotel. I wanted to get to our duty station. We had 2 days to get there, and I was with a guy. His name was Harris from Texas. And he and I split the cost for a hotel room. And
how come the Navy didn't do it?
Well, because we could have stayed longer at home if we wanted to.
I get it.
Or we could have reported right away to our duty station, then there would have been no cost at all incurred. But we wanted to take our time, okay. So we go to this hotel, and the thing I'll never forget, the humidity, and walking down the street, I saw this big, fat, black rat come crawling out of the gutter and just lumbering down the sidewalk, looking at us like, this is an everyday occurrence in Washington, D.C. And, oh my, this is nice. So we didn't get much sleep in that hotel, too hot. It was kind of a flea bag, if you know what I mean. And next day we reported for duty, Ceremonial Guard.
Okay, Anacostia is where?
That is, as the crow flies, it's 5 minutes from the White House. But depending upon traffic, it sits right on the Anacostia River.
Oh.
And the Anacostia River, right across from the Anacostia River is the Washington Naval Yard. It sits right next to Bolling Air Force Base. In fact, that's where we were billeted. I lived and stayed on an Air Force base at Blanchard Barracks. But we worked at Anacostia.
Anacostia Navy, and then Bolling Air Force Base.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so far, okay, now you're checking in to Bolling.
Yep.
What were your quarters like there?
The barracks was great. When the Air Force makes a base, they do it right. They say, what does it take for humans to enjoy this experience, right? So they put in a really good dining hall, they put in a bowling alley, they put in the automobile shop where you can work on your car, all this good stuff. Then they laid down the control tower and the runway, and they put in the hangars for the fighters and all this kind of stuff.
Start sheets.
Yeah, that's right. So,
good food.
But the thing of it was that almost all the guys that stayed in Bolling, they worked at the Pentagon, or they worked at the White House, or they worked at Arlington, or they did something like that.
Okay, how many were there of you?
In our command, there was a total of 150 guys.
That many?
Yep, that's enlisted and officers. Most of us were enlisted.
Okay, and one of your first assignments?
Ex-platoon.
What does that mean?
That means that's where you're going to get trained. We showed up the first day of the regular work week, which was Monday through Friday. They took our uniform that we'd been issued in boot camp, which we called it the Good Humor uniform. This was during the Jimmy Carter administration. And so they wanted everybody to look the same. So we had basically you look like an ice cream salesman. That's why we call it the Good Humor uniform. You look like a good humor guy. They took that and said, you'll never see that again, so get rid of that. They issued me 4 sets of Navy whites, what's called the Cracker Jack uniform, 3 Dixie cups, 2 sets of Navy blues, 3 sets of leggings, 3 gloves, a Navy blue dickie, a white dickie, that's the thing that sits around your throat, a Navy blue agulette, a white agulette.
Oh, what's an agulette?
It looks like braided work.
Got it.
At the end of it, it's got a very handsome brass piece to it. 2 pairs of Corfram shoes. Mine were size 14. They put the brass clickers on the inside of them. 3 pistol belts. They gave us the big brass buckle and what we were supposed to shine. They gave us, what else did they give us? These special, we call them space gloves. They gave us a set of long underwear, because during the winter we were going to need it, big time. a scarf, a white scarf. All this stuff was ceremonial in its nature. So we get all that stuff. And then we went down to our commissary and we bought 2 belts with brass buckles about the size of a cigarette lighter. 2 belts. We had the old style Navy uniform, the working uniform, which was blue jeans, and which was, look, some people call it a prison shirt. It's a light blue shirt. We had those. A baseball cap similar to this one, a couple of them, and a new pair of shoes, and all that stuff. Ex-platoon, what they did in ex-platoon, they taught you how to walk, they taught you how to stand at attention, they taught you how to take care of all your gear. Nobody's got a butler that's going to press off all this stuff and shine all your brass and do all this other stuff.
And that would be a big deal.
Oh yeah, and how to do it without, because your whites, if you don't hit them with enough water and you hit them with that presser, now you've turned them to brown. They frown on that. You have to put that baby back in the washing machine and wash it again.
Wait a minute, you're washing and ironing?
Mm-hmm. We did all that. Yeah, all of our gear was on us. They gave you a locker. They said, there it is. You put all your stuff in there. And in ex-platoon, that's where you got trained how to take care of all that stuff, how to shine your shoes right, how the whole shebang. And we had a guy named Petty Officer Farrell, who was the first class, and one of our guys called him, oh no, the Pharaoh, here comes the Pharaoh, boy, you know, you're not gonna like him. And then we had a guy by the name of Anders, big, tall, Chicago black guy, and those 2 guys were training us. And they were good trainers, they did a really good job. One of the things, just as an example, our working shirt, you would take that and you would put it in a sink full of uncut starch, uncut.
Yikes.
Then you would let it drip dry.
Yikes.
So you could come back and you could stand this shirt up. It would stand up right here. Probably could hold a wire coat hanger standing up by itself. You'd press that baby off. There would be no wrinkles in that at all. And then we had these creases running right down the center here, and you put a crease across the top of your back. You did the same thing with your jeans, except no starch in the jeans. Thank you very much.
Woo.
You press your jeans out, inside out, so you had a reverse curve coming down the side. They would show you how to polish your shoes. So your
What does that mean? How to polish your shoes?
You'd take a standard pair of shoes, you would put several coats of wax, we would call it wax, shoe polish. Just get several coats on there, several coats. Then you take alcohol, and you put a little bit of alcohol on that. You would actually light on fire your polish with some of your alcohol, and then you'd rub that on there, and you use cotton. You'd use an old cotton t-shirt or whatever, and you'd get the front of that shoe looking like a black mirror, and it was all polish. Those were our inspection shoes.
Wow.
Now, the other thing we learned how to do was do what's called a manual of arms. How to pick your rifle up, how to put it to your shoulder, how to present arms with your rifle, all this stuff. Very, very, very precision.
You had not learned this in your...
In boot camp.
Yeah,
None of that. Not even close to it. Walking. I mean, you walk with your feet in front of you, just like this, you know, almost like walking on a balance beam. Very, very straight up and down. We had what were called quarters twice a day. Quarters was a fancy word for inspection. And we would be inspected in our working kit. And what was really hilarious to see, you learned very fast, you had a uniform that was for nothing but inspection. That's all you did. You put that on just for an inspection. And it would just sit in your locker and do nothing except for inspection. And when you walked down in it, and if you had to repress it off because there was one wrinkle in it, you did, you'd walk like a penguin. See, you'd hold your hands out like this. You wouldn't hold them down because that would wrinkle the sleeves. So you'd walk like this. You'd walk with your feet. Your feet wouldn't bend. You'd walk them on your heels so you wouldn't bend and crack your polish right here. Your belt buckle was white gold because when you bought them, they had a plastic finish. You'd burn that off. You'd burn off that plastic finish with alcohol. Brasso became one of our big friends. And then you used Brasso to polish this thing off. There wasn't a scratch in it. So you'd go down there, and your baseball cap, it said Ceremonial Guard on it. You'd put creases here and creases across the top.
That's work.
Oh yeah, and you learned how to do it. You learned how to do it quite well. Thank you very much. And so you had this inspection uniform, and twice daily you got inspected in that. So you'd walk down like a penguin. All these guys, 150 people walking down to quarters, all walking like a penguin. You know, down you go for your inspection. They'd come up, they'd look at you.
And what did they look like?
The same way. You know,
Perfection.
we were, for all intents and purposes, our senior enlisted were third and second class petty officers. And they did the same thing. Their uniform looked the same way. Everybody looked the same. Very, 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 we called it up to and touching. You know, everything was...
Did you have pictures of that?
I actually had a collection of pictures of me getting dressed for a ceremony we did at Fort McHenry. And to put on my dress uniform, you would literally put it on inside out, and the waist was down there. Because you'd bring the pant legs up, you put on your leggings, and you had your socks, you bring the pant legs up, and you literally tape the pant leg around your legging. You had something called a grommet right up here on your leg, which was nothing more than a garden hose, about this big round that would fit around your leg, filled with BBs. And it would be taped up with masking tape. So when you stood up and pulled your pants right side out, these grommets would go down, and it made an absolutely beautiful little umbrella turned upside down at the top of your leggings. That's what that was for.
Oh my gosh.
And we did that for both our summer uniforms, our whites, and our winter uniforms, our blues.
Wow.
Yeah, so ex-platoon, you know, you learned how to march, you learned how to, and how to walk, how to use a rifle, how to press off all your stuff. And then they would periodically have a graduation attempt, for lack of a better term. And this class, and in my ex-platoon, I think there were probably, I don't know, 20 of us max. Maybe 16 guys and maybe 4 gals.
Gals?
Yeah, we had some gals in the ceremonial guard. And what they would do is the chief of our command and some of the leading petty officers that were overcharged, because we had what were called platoons. First platoon, second platoon, third platoon, drill team, and colors. So those were our platoons. So once you graduated from ex-platoon, you went to one of those working platoons.
All equal.
Yes. So we had our graduation attempt, and it gives them a chance to see your shoes, it gives them a chance to see your brass, it gives them a chance to see how well you can press off a uniform, and most importantly, it gives them a chance to see how you move your body, and if you pay attention to commands that you're given. And so they had our graduation attempt, and we passed. We got it the first time.
Well, I was going to ask you, were there any washouts?
Not.
None.
No.
Wow.
Not for us. Now, other platoons, subsequently, other ex-platoons, it did take them several times to graduate. But for whatever reason, our ex-platoon, I mean, we all wanted out of ex-platoon. We wanted to get into a working platoon and get to work. We wanted to get to the White House and the Pentagon, the State Department.
And how long was this taking?
Ex-platoon, we probably did that for 2.5 months.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, 2.5 months. We spent a lot of time over at Anacostia at our working building, sitting in front of a washing machine and dryers, waiting for our stuff to come out and then pressing it off. And we spent a lot of time shining those shoes and shining the brass, getting everything just the way it's supposed to be. A lot of time practicing with our rifles, you know, manual arms, all that kind of stuff.
Well, how about your rifles? Cleaning?
We had practice. We called the rifle a piece. It goes way back. I remember my dad, that's what he called his rifle in the Army, or he carried a machine gun, but they would call it a piece. Mm-hmm. So we called our rifle our piece. Mm-hmm. And so we had a practice piece, and we didn't worry about keeping that shiny or anything else or looking good. Our parade piece, we weren't in charge of that per se. That belonged to a guy in the armory who was in charge of all the weapons. And it was his job to make those things look very, very shiny. They put true oil on it, so if the rifle, when you saw it from a distance, it just glowed. It shot these rays of light off the wood stock and all the brass and everything else, you know. And even the sling was bleached super white as the sun, and there wasn't a thread hanging off of it. And that's what the guy in the armory did. He did all that.
Unloaded, of course.
Oh, unloaded. Yeah, our bolts were actually welded shut. The only protection we could have offered if we needed it, and we would have been the last line of defense, believe you me, was our bayonet. We had a bayonet that was, and it's something else we would learn how to do. We had to learn how to put our bayonets on that kind of stuff.
Was it always attached to the rifle, or?
Well, later for the drill team, because I got put into the drill team, that was taped on. Okay. But initially for a regular service, say at Arlington, or maybe the Washington Navy Yard, we would actually march out, and our rifle would not have the bayonet on it yet. We actually had a ceremony where we put the bayonet on it.
Okay. Did you have one specific place you wanted to go?
Yes, the White House.
No, of course.
Yeah, that was my dream. I want to see the president.
Of course.
And that culminated because the FBI did an extensive background investigation on me. In fact, one of my friends, one of my roommates right out of high school, I had written him, and he wrote me back, and he said, "What did you do? The FBI was around asking questions about you." And I learned later they went to my grade school and everything. Now, tell me, Mrs. Vestal, young Gilbert, as a third grader, threw an eraser across the room. Now, did he say anything when he threw the eraser? I see. Yes, yeah. Take that down, Simmons. You know, I mean, they left no stone unturned, and I mean no stone unturned.
And people you didn't even know they found out.
Yeah.
To interview.
Yeah, they knew how to investigate quite well. Yeah.
So you were a good boy and passed that one.
I got my top secret when you got a TS. That meant you're going to the White House. You can go to the White House. And I got my top secret in, I would say, late 80. No, I got it in late 79 because the election of 1980. I got it in late 79, and the first time I went to the White House, I saw Carter and Anwar Sadat. Those were the two people I saw, the dignitaries.
Yeah, okay. Going to the White House, when you learned about it and you actually went over there, what was that like for you?
Oh, heavens.
Yeah.
Can you say gold at the end of the rainbow? Can you say get into the Super Bowl? I mean, you know.
Heady stuff.
Oh, very heady stuff. Yeah, it was, I kept praising God. Thank you, God. Thank you for letting this happen to me. Thank you.
And were you a Christian the whole time then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what happens is, anytime, and you've probably seen this on TV, when a visiting dignitary comes, they will invariably have them go to a podium that faces the south lawn of the White House. Mm-hmm. Well, we were on the south, and you can see the guys in the background holding the flags, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, Colors Platoon does that. Mm-hmm. Now, to be in Colors Platoon, you had to be at least 6'2". I'm 6'1", so I didn't make Colors Platoon, which didn't bother me. You'll find out later why. Mm-hmm. So you see these guys in the background all holding flags. You see Navy, Army, Marines, the whole shebang. Out on the south lawn, what they've got are the working platoons. And each branch of the service is represented. So you got Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard. And so we all march on, and then we turn, and we're standing there. We call it ceremonial at ease. Anybody else would call it attention. And we put on our bayonets using the music, and then we stand there ceremonial at ease. And then when the president comes out, we render present arms to him. We also render present arms to Anwar Sadat. And then we go back to ceremonial at ease. He gets up, he gives a speech, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. He leaves, and then we march off. After the dignitaries have left, we leave. Now, what struck me, when we went there, before we marched on, we can kind of relax. So we're inside the fence. We're on that oval driveway that goes up to the door on the south side of the White House. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing some Secret Service guys, and they had what was called the War Wagon. And what the War Wagon was a large station wagon. They now use the Suburban. But in the back of it, it was just chock full of all kinds of automatic weapons and special devices for their particular specialty. And the other thing I remember about the Secret Service was they had no sense of humor at all. You might ask them, how's it going? What's it like to guard the president? And they just glare at you. You know, don't ever ask that question again. You know what's good for you? You want to see your 20th birthday? Don't ever say anything like that again. You know? That's the look that you got from those guys. Oh, okay, I get it.
Well trained.
Yeah, and some of my guys that had been there, Alden, sorry, we forgot to tell you. Yeah, you don't want to talk to those guys. They have no idea. Yeah. So don't make any sudden movements around me there. It could be deadly, you know. So
getting back for 1 minute, you say it again, you presented the arms to the dignitary as well as the president. Mm-hmm. Can you explain why you do that?
It was a way of the United States saying, we are here to honor you. Now, the President of the United States always got it first. He came out, you know, I've come to think of it, we might have just done it once for both of them. Because they would play a song called Ruffles and Flourishes, which is the song they played to honor the president. And just before that, you'd hear this, present arms, you know, whoosh, we'd all do it at the same time. And then they'd play that song, dun 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 dun, you know, and here comes the president walking side by side with Anwar Sadat. They come out there. He salutes, Anwar Sadat, hand over his heart. Yeah, I think we only did it once. I don't think we did it 2 times.
Okay. It's obviously a traditional thing that's been going on for a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah.
Very long time.
On a side note, would that be happening in other countries? This is an American tradition.
I'm guessing it would. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Very proud. Do you remember you said the very first one was Anwar Sadat.
Yes.
And President Carter.
That's correct.
Did they ever look at you, acknowledge you?
No. Reagan did.
I bet he did.
He took more of a, Sadat and Carter. It's not like they, looked out for the lower 40. Now they could obviously, they're looking out, they got a microphone right here, and they're presenting to the crowd this way, and we're out there. But I actually heard now, the first time I went to the White House, I remember a guy named Walter Shine, a friend of mine, and I said, well, man, really something to be in the White House. He goes, yeah, pretty cool, isn't it? And I said, do you ever get a chance to converse? And he goes, well, one time Carter was jogging, and he came back from a jog before he was going to present, and he came right over to us and started talking to us. Really? He did that? Wow! I wonder if we'll do that today. I wouldn't bank on it all, but anyway,
Because they're not supposed to bother you because you're on duty.
Well, I'm guessing it's more to do with their schedule.
Sure, of course.
They got things going, and so.
Were you really nervous? Like, oh man, I can't blow this the first go around?
Not really.
You were ready.
No, I got substantially nervous later when I was in the drill team.
Okay, so how long did you do the ceremonial? You said.
Yes, and I did that. The majority of my enlistment, but what happened after we graduated from Platoon, now they're deciding amongst the working platoons where these guys are going to go. And initially myself and a guy named Mark Moody from a place called Sibley, Iowa, he and I went to 1st Platoon. And there was kind of an understanding that, hey, 1st Platoon is first. I mean, they got the good. 3rd Platoon was kind of like F Troop, remember that? Although all these guys did a superb job, and then there was 2nd Platoon. Well, Mark and I, we went over to 1st Platoon. We were there for maybe, a week, and then we were approached about, you guys want to be in the drill team?
Is that even better?
Yes.
Okay.
And for reasons I'll reference in a few moments. 1st Platoon was mad about that. They didn't like it. Hey, they're taking away our best guys. That always happens. And they're going to drill team, We Mark and I went to drill team, and that started a new form of training. How to spin a rifle with a bayonet on it, how to catch a rifle, how to throw it, how to do all these different manuals of arms in timing in a 16-man block.
I've watched that. How do you keep from dropping it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well.
Very impressive.
Yeah, I never did. I came close a couple of times, but what happened is, the name of the game is that you're going to live with that rifle. You'll be twirling that rifle. You learned how to twirl a rifle with both your hands. You learned how to twirl a rifle with both of them. You learned how to throw one. You learned how to catch it. You learned how to catch it with the bayonet. You could catch it on the bayonet. We would have contests, rifle in this hand, now spin. I could do 110 right and 100 left. You were always forearms. My forearms now are shrimpy compared to what they were then because I was always spinning that rifle.
Yeah.
So, and we had practice pieces, and they were hard plastic and metal. And what would happen is, and at least this happened to me, and I saw it happen to other guys too, as you got your hands used to where to catch this rifle, this part of your hand and this part of your hand had these lovely, fat, bloody calluses over here too, here, because you haven't learned how to spin this rifle.
Yeah.
But you got it down. I mean, pretty soon they started going down, and we can get this okay. And so
why spin a rifle? What's that point? Just
because
the look.
Part of your manual of arms. For example, we would march out, and our first evolution of various movements was about 22 movements.
Wow.
So we'd take a rifle, we'd flip it, we'd do this, we'd all this kind of stuff. And the reason you do all that kind of stuff, pomp and circumstance, impressive. You know, the admirals smile at that. The admiral's wives think, "Oh yeah, aren't they sweet?" You know, this kind of stuff.
It is impressive.
And it's the sound when you got 16 guys all doing it this at the same time, and they're doing all this kind of stuff. It's quite impressive.
Yes, it is.
I would argue that the only difference between, at least at the time I was in it, between the Navy Ceremonial Guard and the U.S. Marine Corps drill team is they were silent. But our movements, because I'd seen them then, I see them now, what we did with the rifle was just as impressive, if not more so.
Gil, what's the difference between a Navy ceremonial and a Marine? Is it just the two services?
Yes.
Why just those two?
Because the Marines have always acted independently, even though they come under the Navy Department, they are an independent entity within the Naval Department, which is fine. I think they should be. The Marines, sharp, love them. We did a lot of work with 8th and I, but that's why.
And that is why and why not the Army?
Well, the only time we worked with the Army is when we did joint service details. But we just so you understand, we didn't do any drill team work with the Marines. We had our own drill team. They had their own drill team.
How did they choose which one to use between Navy and military?
They would, I don't know. The military bureaucracy would call U.S. Navy Ceremonial Guard and say, "Will you come and represent yourself at this event?" So we did all kinds of things. We did retirements. I did a halftime show at RFK Stadium. We did a very long walk through Buffalo, New York, in the middle of July. We did all kinds of things.
Why do they call the the Marines, the President's Own? Why did they say that?
Well, that usually applies to the President's Own, which is the Marine Corps Band.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Now, I had some difficulty getting to the point where I was not able to fully manipulate my rifle the way I wanted to. Now, mind you, I never dropped my rifle. That was a no-no. You don't do that. That's a keel hauling offense.
What does that mean?
If you do it twice, you're going to get in the firing squad. You know, you don't drop your rifle. My first performance, my first detail, happened right across the parade ground from Ceremonial Guard at a Marine Corps Reserve Center, and an admiral was retiring. So it's indoors, and we're in our beautiful, immaculately pressed U.S. Navy cotton whites, and we go out there, and here we go. Well, what I would experience is you get nervous. You know, we're going through all these manuals of arms, and you don't want to drop your rifle. You don't want to go out of time. You want to do it right. What happened with me, I can't speak with my fellow ceremonial guardsmen. The very thing you depend upon would get very wet with sweat, my hands. And I've got a rifle that's got true oil on the stock. It's as slippery as a piece of glass. And we're working with our bare hands. My first detail on the first manual of arms, the one that had about 22 movements in it, okay? So everything's going fine, yeah, this piece of cake, keep going. And right towards the end of it, my rifle goes flying out of my hands, right in front of me, and it's no longer a U.S. Navy Presidential Honor Guard drill team rifle. It has become an errant helicopter blade, spinning quite rapidly. But that thing is not going to hit the deck. No way, Jose. So I semi-tackled the bloody thing. And what happens, this would make a great America's Funniest Video. The bayonet slices me right here. I feel out the scar, okay? The butt of that rifle slaps me upside the head, and my beautiful U.S. Navy metallic blue gold helmet flies off my helmet, off my head, and it lands on the deck, makes a nice loud racket, and everybody can see me going kind of spastic because I got hit by my own rifle. And now my beautiful white uniform is becoming red and white polka dot with A positive blood, mine, the guy next to me and the guy in front of me. And the name of the game is, you do not cease that ceremony. You finish the ceremony. You better be dead or you finish the ceremony. It doesn't matter, you got cut. So I did.
Polka dotted.
Yeah, and polka dotted. And here's this guy, his helmet's laying over there. He's got a red cuff now on his uniform and all this kind of stuff. And I finished the detail. Oh yeah, I finished the detail.
Talk about butt of the joke.
Oh boy, howdy, yeah. And marched off and I'm thinking, oh boy. Have you ever one of those moments you just want to see and just go hide in a mouse hole over there? That was my first detail.
Did the others stay composed?
Oh yeah, out there, you can hear it. Way to go, Alden, man! This blood's not coming out of my uniform easy. That's the kind of conversation that's going on as you're out there spinning your rifle and throwing it and everything else.
Hey, it had to happen to them too,
Oh,
Gil.
well, here's what did happen to every one of them. I kept track of this. Every one of them dropped their rifle once. There's 16 of us in a block. And I was man number 16 who never dropped his rifle. He might have come close, but he never dropped his rifle.
But no polka dots on there.
No more polka dot uniform. No more slit wrist by my own rifle.
Oh boy, one of those memorable.
Oh, heavens to murder tried. Yes, indeed. Yeah, that was interesting.
What was the best, if there was a best experience, aside from that one?
Yeah, that was funny, and there were a couple of other funny ones. The one that actually, it would be a tie. It caused me to shed a tear. Not very much, because you don't break down crying when you're doing a ceremony. Mm-hmm. The first one was when I did Reagan's inauguration.
Wow, really?
And I got selected for that.
Wow.
And I got put, the first time I saw Reagan, I was in the basement of the Capitol Rotunda sitting outside of an anteroom. And what happened, President-elect Reagan would go into the anteroom and he was going to wait there. He would just wait. I'll bet President Trump probably went to the same room. Mm-hmm. So he goes to this anteroom and he waits. Now, I was stationed right outside that room, and when he was coming down the hall, we heard somebody command us to present arms. And he walked in front of us. He walked right in front of me. I saw him. I saw Billy Graham walk in front of me. All these people, these dignitaries, his friends, they all went in that room. So they closed the door and they said, okay, we're going to move you guys. So then I was moved to the landing at the top of the steps of the Capitol building where he would walk out between two columns. And there we are. There's a red carpet. And I'm there with my rifle. And we've done this. We know what we're supposed to do. We heard the command to present arms, brought our rifle up. I hear this pair of feet walking down that marble hallway, click, 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 click. Then he gets on the red carpet, walks, stops right there in front of me. I could have taken a yardstick and held it out and touched him. That's how close he was. He stood there with his hands at his side. That was a signal for the inaugural parade to begin. So that started. And he stood there for 5 minutes, right in front of me. Now I couldn't say a word. The only thing I could move was my eyeballs.
You could do that.
I could look like that, but that's all you could move. You could not move anything else.
You don't
turn your head.
Look always straight ahead.
Yep. Yeah.
But I mean, your eyes could move. But
yeah. So and I looked him up and down. I thought, here's the President of the United States. Here's Ronald Reagan. First thing I noticed, I'm taller than he is. But I just kept going through my mind. Thanks, God. Thank you. Thank you that I'm here. I'm here. So I'm doing this.
Yes.
From little old Salem, Oregon, Gil Alden is right next to the President of the United States. I couldn't believe. I was exceedingly thankful.
Yes. An amazing historical experience.
Yes.
Like you say, from Salem, Oregon, who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah. So how long did you participate in that particular event?
After he stood there for 5 minutes, he went down to another landing. He was there for 5 minutes. We had our rifles that present arms. And then he went someplace else. We were called to order arms. I'm guessing maybe less than 5 minutes later, we were commanded to leave, which we did. We walked off in ceremonial fashion, went to our buses, climbed on the bus, went back to my command. That was it.
What a conversation you must have had. How many were there of you that
participated in that? I would say all told, including flag bearers and working platoon guys, possibly even drivers, educated guess, 80 to 100 of us.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Did you participate in any ceremonial, like ballrooms, entertainment at the White House?
Well, not at the White House, at the State Department.
Okay, can you give me
a story
about that?
They came and got us from drill team, and they said, okay, you guys are going to be, basically we were ushers. We didn't have a weapon, and it was the Navy and the Marines. We got there first. We got to the State Department. And there were, I think, 10 of us max. And we get out, we gear up, we put on all our gear, and a representative of the State Department comes and gets it. He goes, okay, guys, follow me. So we went to the top floor, State Department. That's where it has this big ballroom where they're going to have this humongous, sumptuous feast. And my job was simply to stand in front of this doorway or an entryway that went down that hall so that they would know, don't go that way into that room over there, right? So I'm standing there at attention, and here they come. So I decided, now remember, the only thing I can move is my eyes. And I'm moving my eyes, and I remember thinking to myself, I've seen a 3- or 4-star admiral or general from every single major industrialized country except Vietnam and North Korea.
Wow. Really?
And they were in their full dress uniforms.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and they all walked in, and you could hear them in there. They were playing soft, classical jazz music. And after all those guys got in there, the State Department rep comes out, and he said, okay, head on in, have fun, mingle.
And you did.
Oh, of course. And he pulls out of his pocket. This guy had this big, we could see his pocket bulging, reaches in his pocket, pulls it out, and his hand is covered with matchbooks. On one hand, it's the seal of the President of the United States. On the other side, it's embossed with the White House, and underneath that in gold it says President Ronald Reagan. Would you like some? Would we? Are you kidding? And so everybody, we grabbed 3 or 4 of those.
Do you still have it?
You know, I don't, because I had all this stuff. I got burglarized when I lived in Oregon. Yeah. And I had all this stuff in a very nice satchel.
No.
And the burglar took the satchel, and I lost all that. I should have put it in a safety deposit box.
No, who would think?
Yeah. Yeah, that was painful.
And nothing meant nothing to them.
Nothing. It probably ended up in the dumpster.
Oh, gosh, Gil.
Yeah, I wouldn't have killed the guy that did that.
Oh, gosh,
Good thing they caught him before I did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But, being in Washington, this special environment, can you explain the power, the pomp and circumstance? And one more question I wanted to ask you. How far in advance did they give you before you went to an event?
We usually had 24 hours notice. And we had what was called the detail board. And they would put up on the board, here's the detail, here's the job, here's what you're doing. And they would list your names. And it would tell you what time you had to be ready to leave. So we knew ahead of time. And so all the uniforms would be all pressed off and ready to go. And that's the same way it worked with details in Arlington when we did funerals. We did details at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
And I want you to share about that. That's very important. Arlington.
Yes, Arlington
very
was.
important
Now you asked me
hear.
what was the other most. It was a tie for most meaningful experience between doing Reagan's inauguration on one hand and doing funerals on the other. Now, I think I've shared this with you before. I eventually got to the place where I was handing the flag to the widow. That was not a pleasant experience at all. You're seeing this poor gal, and when I handed the flag, it was always to a widow. And we were instructed to say, on behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, I present you this flag.
How did you keep from choking up?
I barely did. You knew, because I had participated in folding the flag, I participated in carrying the casket up to the grave site, setting the casket down and fold the flag. I participated in handing the flag to the guy I knew all that. And so I was prepared. So when I was in that position where a flag would be handed to me, I said, okay, here it comes, just, even demeanor, don't break, don't do anything, just repeat those words, don't look at her too long, because that could cause you some problems. I've been told that by these other, don't look at her too long, look at her, look her in the face, then look at the flag, that'll help. And that's what I did. And then she took the flag, and I straightened up, and I would salute her, and I'm not looking, my eyes are looking straight ahead. And I held that salute for maybe 5 seconds, and I'd slowly drop the salute, and I would very sharply turn, and I'd walk off the site. And once you got off the site, that's when wow, man, that drew some tears.
Yeah, Gil, when, what was not to be graphic or gruesome, but was it a typical response when you handed the flag over? Were they solemn? Was it all across the board emotion-wise?
All mine that I did that with, they were all shedding tears, but they were solemn. They didn't screech out. They didn't.
And that's what I see on TV.
Yeah, they didn't. None of the ones. Now, that's not to say it didn't happen. It didn't happen on my watch. I didn't experience anything like that.
Did you know anything about the family? Did you know who had passed away?
Well, we knew if we're burying somebody in Arlington Cemetery, they're one of three things. They are on active duty and they just got killed. Mm-hmm. They're a retired vet who is entitled to be buried there. Or they were a dependent of a vet. In fact, I buried a baby once. Myself and this guy's name was Galloway from Rome, Georgia. I can still see his face in my mind's eye. We had no idea when we went there who we were going to be burying. But he and I got called for it. And up on the detail board, there we were, and we thought, why just two of us? What's up? And then we thought, well, okay, maybe we're going to be putting away a cremation urn.
Oh, you've done that too?
Yeah, and we thought that would make sense, just two guys holding a box or whatever. We get there, and it was a small casket about this long. I remember it was white, and on each side of it, it had two little rope handles. And so myself and Galloway, we picked that thing up, and we very honorably and very in a dignified fashion walked it over to the gravesite, very calmly set it down, slowly. I remember I caught a glimpse of the mother, and she was heartbroken. And then we marched off, and we both, after that, we just kind of said, wow, we didn't expect that. And all the way back, because Fort Myer administers Arlington Cemetery, so anytime somebody said, we're going to Fort Myer, okay, we're going to be doing a funeral over there. That's usually what we did at Fort Myer.
Okay.
So.
Okay, you mentioned the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Yes.
How did you participate there?
We did all Navy wreath lanes there.
Navy?
Wreath lanes?
Explain that.
That would be where a visiting dignitary would lay a wreath at the tomb.
Oh, wreath laying.
Yes.
Got it. I'm sorry.
And so what happened was there were 16 guys that would do that. The tomb would sit like this. We would march out. And we had a very, when you walk down the tomb, your rifle was very close like this. You would step, you do a very high knee step, you bring in your knees up one at a time, very slow.
And
everybody's
clicking
doing
the
that.
heel.
Yeah, that your feet are all coming down at the same time, click, 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 click. And then one row would peel off, and they would line the tomb would be here, and the lines would be like this. So these guys would peel off, and they'd line this side, we'd line this side, and the commanding officer would be right here, and he'd give the presentation, or the command, I should say, present arms. And at that moment, then the ambassador, whoever it was, we did the ambassador of Japan, Caspar Weinberger was there. And so we marched out there, and we present arms, and he picks up the wreath, he walks over, he sets it down, taps is played, they play taps, present arms by everybody salutes, or they would put their hand over their chest. We're already up with our rifles. Slow playing and present arms. That would conclude. The first people to order arms would be us. That command would go up very loud by our commanding officer. We'd order arms, and then everybody else would. And then they may give a speech, may not. And then after that, they would disperse, and we'd disperse, and we'd head back.
So there's the Old Guard?
Yes,
the
3rd Infantry. They administer that. They're in charge of that whole deal.
But you support them.
Yeah, that's a good way to do. That's a good way to put it. We would do, if we did all Navy wreath lanes, which they would let us do, then that's what would happen.
Okay, not to belabor this, but they chose. You said Navy wreath lane. Was there a rotation, or why the?
Sometimes Navy? they would use other services. Okay. Air Force wreath lane.
Okay.
Could be all Marine wreath lane, Army, stuff like that.
Okay. Were you ever able to mingle with the tourists, the representatives? Could you mingle with them at all?
No.
You could not?
No.
That makes sense.
Yeah, once we finished our job, we were out of there.
You were gone. Is there one specific experience that you do remember at Arlington, and did you spend quite a bit of time there?
Yes, spent. As a member of the drill team at that time, we were seasonal. Now, right now, as I speak, the U.S. Navy Presidential Honor Guard drill team, they're year-round. That's all they do. At that time, back in 79, 80, 81, 82, we started being the Navy drill team probably early spring, and we went to mid-fall. So during that time, we never went to Arlington. We were doing drill team stuff. Like I mentioned, Buffalo, New York. We were all up and down the East Coast. One time we went to Bermuda, Bermuda Heritage Week. That's what we did. We represented the Navy in that fashion. So, but during the winter months, from mid-fall on all through the winter, we went to Arlington. We did funerals just like all the other working platoons.
Just different types of emotions and experience. Arlington was one, Inauguration, so just a range of different experiences.
Well, there's a fair amount of humor. And the reason is because you remember we were ceremonial, we were it. We actually trained a group of Navy SEALs how to march once, because they were going to do a ceremony. So the Navy SEALs
I
got
would
sent to
remember
us,
that one.
and we trained these guys, and they're walking around with Uzis on these special slings and all this, and we showed them how to march, blah blah blah. So we were expected. All of our ceremonies were supposed to be with flawless, no mistakes. But I already proved you know, my first drill team one that could have gone very badly, but I never dropped my rifle. But there were times in which things would happen, and you would say, "You got to be kidding me! Am I really seeing this?" For example, we were doing the all-Navy wreath lane at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It was, in fact, the one that I told you about, in front of Caspar Weinberger, in front of the Ambassador of Japan, and TV cameras are there. And I'm standing right next to the commander of the U.S. Navy Ceremonial Guard, Lieutenant Commander Filippi. Great guy. Great guy. Well, he brings us to present arms. Present arms! We all come, a rifle comes up, and the next thing I see is his hat goes blip, 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 right, lands right in front of him. Now, I'm thinking to myself, surely I'm hallucinating. I cannot have just seen what I think I saw. I really thought I was hallucinating. So I didn't turn my head, but I did. Okay, I look at, yeah, the wind is blowing his hair. He doesn't have a cap on. There's his cap. Well, what had happened was, and this has happened many times before, but when you bring your sword up, you want to bring it out. You don't want to bring it up and out, because you'll catch the bill of your hat and flip it off, which is exactly what he did. And I'm thinking, and you're standing there with your rifle, and you can't laugh, but inside I'm laughing. Oh man, can you believe this poor slob in front of TV cameras, no less? Oh boy, can't help you, Lieutenant Commander, you know, all this kind of stuff. That happened. Yeah. And then the other one that stands out, and there were smaller examples, but the other one that stands out was we were doing a temporary duty assignment at Fort Bliss, El Paso for General Anwar Bradley. And it was at the Sun Bowl. It was a halftime show at the Sun Bowl.
And hot.
It was hot. A dry heat, though.
Yeah.
And so we're gathered, and the deal was you're going to have all these working platoons. The Army was in charge of it, so they had trained us. And on this particular detail, I did something I hardly ever did. I was holding a flag. And so I wasn't going to be handling a rifle. I had my flag, and I was kind of hoping I'd get my home state of Oregon to hold, but I didn't. I missed it. Anyway, okay. And there wasn't a baby's breath wind in that stadium. And here comes these two college teams, and halftime happens, okay? They run to the locker rooms. Just as we get set up in formation to walk out on this football field, a West Texas wind picks up. A baby tornado is what it was. And we go marching out there in this bowl. The Sun Bowl is a bowl. And I've got this flag, and it's like I'm on a boat off the coast of Miami trying to reel in a tuna. You know, all this kind of stuff. And all these hats, you know, we didn't have anything to keep our hat on. Neither did the Army, neither did the Air Force. The Marines had brains enough to have they had a strap that came down like this. So all these hats got blown off, and they're inside this bowl whirling around. And I remember I turned and I saw Omar Bradley about 30 yards away in a wheelchair saluting. I'm sitting there with this flag, you know, trying to keep this thing straight. And everybody else up and down the line doing the same thing. You hear these guys, man, whose bright idea was this? You know, all this kind of stuff. My hat never got blown off my head. I don't know how it didn't happen, but it did, you know. I was one of the few guys that still had my Dixie cup. And we marched off thinking, geez, you gotta be kidding me. You know, and we were laughing ourselves silly as we're marching off. And a lot of that kind of stuff happened on a semi-regular basis, you know. Most times people didn't know about it, but we knew about it.
Well, but speaking of weather, I mean, you were in all kinds of weather. How did you keep clean and neat?
Because every time we went out on a ceremonial detail, we had a fresh uniform on.
But it would be dripping wet.
It could be, and in which case we'd be wearing our ceremonial raincoat. We'd still have our little Dixie cup, that gets soaking wet. One time, during a very substantial snowstorm in Arlington, we went out, all Navy sailors, we came out all looking like gnomes because everybody had a nice little curved mound of snow on the top of their head because you couldn't do anything to wipe it off. You're sitting there like this as they're carrying on with their funeral, you know, here comes the snow. You had these little mountains on top of your ears, you know, on your shoulders.
But freezing to death.
Oh, heavens. Well, we had our pea coats and we had our long underwear underneath that and another t-shirt, you know.
Yeah, it helped.
It helped.
Gil, do you miss all this stuff?
That's a good question. I missed, as I told you, I was going to make a career out of the service. I actually got injured. I'm a disabled veteran. You may or may not know that.
I did not know this.
And what injured me was the ceremonial guard. My first job was, they looked at me and they said, he's a big husky guy, let's make a body bearer out of him. That means a casket carrier, right?
Right.
So you had 6 guys on a casket, and you would walk up, and we had a very, very ceremonial way of walking with the casket, which we did. You got to understand, when you're dealing with a casket, you're dealing with the deceased inside, 200 pounds, mahogany, oak, walnut, you're throwing another 200, 300 pounds, lead lined. Okay, you're throwing in another couple hundred pounds. You're dealing with something pretty heavy. You'd walk up to the setup, that was the hole in the ground, and you'd turn and you'd face center. So now you're holding the casket like this. The way they wanted you to set it down, and if an orthopedist saw this, he goes, are you crazy? They want you to bend at the waist to set it down. Very, 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 and after I started actually as a body bearer doing work, I developed some substantial back problems.
Understood.
And they stayed with me for 17 years.
And common injury?
Yes, a lot of guys had back problems.
And have they changed the tactics as far as you know?
Well, I watched the last funeral I saw in which, and I told Angie, I said, that's exactly what I did right there, Angie. It was Reagan's. I watched Reagan's funeral. And I said, now let's see if they, I remember when they carried his casket down from the Capitol steps. That was no problem. I mean, you guys on the bottom are doing this, the guys on the top are doing this. No biggie, but they're standing straight up and down. Well, I watched him when they set it down and said, Angie, look, they're still doing it. That was Reagan's funeral. Wow, I said, they're still doing it. And I actually had a suggestion. I'd suggest it now. Instead of turning and facing in, stay sideways and simply bend at the knees. Just bend your knees. The reason I was told that they didn't want us to do that was, well, it might make your pant legs look a little wrinkly.
Oh my.
Well, yeah, it's going to at that moment, but when you straighten back up, they're going to straighten out. You're only going to be doing it for several seconds.
But still looking ceremonial.
Yeah, you can still look ceremonial and do it.
Yeah.
And that was a big disappointing experience I had with the service, because I went to the Washington Navy Yard and I said, look, and the doctor said, his basic answer to me was, you just have to learn how to live with it. So I did a lot of exercise while I was in the service. I swam then, I swim now, and that really helped. But
so did you do your full service then?
3 years.
Still,
Yeah.
Continuing lifting and marching and.
Well, the last part of my enlistment, I went into submarines.
Okay. Oh.
I went to sub training in Groton, Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
I was actually assigned to the USS Omaha, SSN 692 in Pearl Harbor. I was really hoping that, okay, a change of duty style will be more user-friendly to my back, but the damage had been done.
Yeah.
I actually went to see a private physician in Honolulu, Hawaii. I paid out of my own pocket. And I told him what happened. I told him to do it, and he goes, good night, gravy. And then he did some tests. He said, yeah, you're L4, L5. You need surgery. And I took that information at that time at Pearl Harbor. The chief medical for the military was Tripler Medical Center in Pearl Harbor. So I went up there and I said, "Here, guys, you know, this civilian doc, he's telling you what to do." They took great umbrage at that. They did not like that at all. Ooh, and that was pretty much the end of my service. I was scheduled to reenlist, but I told the XO on my boat, I said, "This is not going to happen, XO, and this is why." And
yeah, well, and it could have been further injuries down the road.
yeah, and as I said, it was 17 years before I had it. Literally 17 years waking 24/7. I felt it L4, L5 down.
Wow. Wow.
Praise God, I finally had a neurosurgeon worked up here on Spokane, and he cured it.
Made a difference.
Oh, heavens to Murgatroyd, yes.
Wow.
I'll never forget when I woke up out of that surgery, I said, "What's missing? Something's weird. I'm not in pain.
Wow.
It's not hurting."
Wow.
And he came in, "Yeah, okay, this is what we found, Gil. This is what we did." And then he gave me a recovery regime to follow. And I did to the letter, and I
so
yeah,
much.
a lot
Well,
of
that's no, I wasn't aware of that part, but good news for that. Well, you got out of the service, and then
I spent a year in Alaska, which I developed conviction: get your butt back down lower 48 and get an education, get a secondary education, which I did. I got a Bachelor of Arts, and then God said to me, "You need to go into full-time ministry, son." I said, "Okay." It's off to seminary I went, and I've never regretted that decision. And
it was God's calling.
God's calling, God's fingerprints all over it, just like it was in the Navy. Big, you know, who would have thought Gil Alden from Salem, Oregon would end up in the U.S. Navy Presidential Honor Guard, but I did.
Right.
And standing next to the president and all that stuff.
Huge.
Big time, yeah. And so, yeah, I went to seminary, and now here I am in Walla Walla, Washington. I am a chaplain up at the Washington State Penitentiary.
And you've been there how long now?
20 years.
20 years. My goodness. Talk about from the president to the clients.
I used to say, a funny, you know, the Navy has lots of experiences. I had lots of them.
Indeed.
Even though I never went to sea. But I use this sometimes, people will say, "Well, I did this, I did this, I did this," and then they put this up on the board, then the group has to guess, "Well, who did this?" And I said, you know, mine is, my 3 ones, I wrestled a bear, I stood next to the President of the United States, and I've stood next to some of the most dangerous, evil people on the planet.
What a resume.
Yeah, what a resume. Yeah.
God has a sense of humor.
He's got a sense of humor, you better believe that. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I shouldn't say this on tape, but you're dealing with criminals now, and you are probably dealing with a few criminals.
Yes, indeed.
Anyway, moving right along
different
here.
kind of white collar, blue collar, yeah, right.
Moving along.
Yes.
Gil, have you stayed in touch with anybody from the service?
Yes, I have. There's a gentleman by the name Dave Kasner, and he was my roommate, and he and I were on the drill team together. Great guy. He's the guy that I mentioned wrestling a bear. We wrestled the bear on a weekend. We had a weekend off, and it was back in D.C. And Dave was always reading. He was a reader, always reading the newspaper. And he goes, "Hey man, listen to this," you know. And he told me that, "Let's go. What are we waiting for? You know, how do you be?" And anyway, so we went off to wrestle this bear.
Literally wrestling bear.
Yes.
Literally. Okay.
One at a time. It was I wouldn't even think about doing it now for a lot of different reasons, but when you're a youth, how does one put it? We can be impulsive. We have...
invulnerable.
Right, and we also believe that we can accomplish things we have absolutely no chance of accomplishing at all. I mean, you know, one-on-one with this bear was European black bear, 650 pounds, 7.5 feet tall. You can still look him up online, by the way. His name was Victor, the wrestling bear.
What's his name?
Victor.
Okay, Victor.
That's because he was always victorious. Believe me, I know. He was always victorious.
Maybe that's part of the back problem.
Oh, yeah. No, maybe it might have helped it. I don't know. But,
that's funny.
Yeah, Dave Kasner. He's in, come on, where's he at? He's a high school science teacher. And Peach Orchard Road in Georgia. What town in Georgia? What's a big town?
Peachtree, Atlanta, Savannah.
He's outside of Atlanta, I believe.
There's Peachtree City.
Yeah, Peachtree Lane.
Okay.
So, and that's got to be something in. I can go home and find the address. I'm not.
But it's a big suburb of Atlanta, maybe. In that area.
Yes.
And looking back at your military career, you've named highlights, but one thing that's, maybe you've named it, but a highlight of your military career.
A highlight of it?
A highlight.
The Ceremonial Guard
Yeah.
and the Reagan's inauguration, and also it's a first place tie with doing Reagan's inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most that happened really fast, too fast. That's one of those experiences you want it to last longer, but it didn't. But I got to experience it, you know, and you write home or you call home and you say, hey, Dad, guess what? I just did blah blah blah.
Any pictures of that anywhere, Gil?
It's interesting you should ask. The first time Angie and I went to New York City, we went to the Museum of Radio and TV. The news agency who covered Reagan's inauguration was ABC, Sam Donaldson. So we go there, and she types in, at this time you could still see old film footage of events, Reagan's inauguration, President Reagan's first inauguration. And they had these various clips. Well, you recall I told you that I was in the basement of the Capitol in front of that anteroom where Reagan came in. Well, they filmed that. And as he walked right across my path, there it is. It's on film.
Yeah, that's great.
And Angie actually came and got me. I was looking at somebody else. She goes, Gil, come, she goes, isn't that you right there? That's me, you know.
Boy, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And can you say that the service and all that experience in any way has affected the rest of your life? Has changed your life, impressed your life, made a difference in your life?
Well, it's certainly focused and solidified my thoughts towards what it means to be a patriot.
I'm sure.
And that has caused me to do more historical research to determine what are the patriotic, theological, societal, and political foundations upon which this country was founded. Because my time in the Ceremonial Guard was all about that. It was a visual, this is why we are doing this.
Yes.
And the people that we buried were those individuals who said, this is why I'm serving, and this is why I'm taking this risk. I know I may be killed, but these are the ideals I'm standing for. And they stood and they made the supreme sacrifice. And I'm guessing if you could bring them back from the dead, if Jesus could resurrect or resuscitate them the way he did Lazarus, they'd say, I'd do it all over. I wouldn't change a thing.
Well said. Very, very, very articulate. And what a privilege. Oh, if we could just understand to walk in your shoes for a while, those clicking shoes, to understand that. Yeah, that's very, very great comments there. Let's see, is there anything that we have not covered that you would like to add to this interview? And I do want you to, you've mentioned Angie, obviously, that is your wife, Angie.
Right, yeah.
We want to acknowledge her.
Yeah.
Of course. I need to ask you, where did she come into the picture along the way?
Well, I met my dear wife, I was in college getting ready to graduate PSU, so that would have been 89.
Portland State.
Yes, and she likes to say, I'm going to give you a really good Baptist answer. We met each other at a Bible study. And the first thing she thought of me was, somebody put a cork in his mouth and shut him up. Which I understand. I agree with that.
She liked what you had to say. It worked.
Yeah, she just thought I was, I've learned to pull back a little bit on talking so much, shall we say.
No, it's good stuff. It's very, very interesting, entertaining. But again, anything else that, Vic, do you have any questions?
No.
Yeah, boy, yeah, we, good job of covering all this. No regrets, great resume, and anything else you can think of maybe you'd like to add into this?
I would simply say that next, I think that veterans and their families are probably the most valuable people in our culture, next to disciples of Jesus Christ.
Thank you.
I would say disciples are first for a lot of various reasons, but the veterans and their families come in a close second because of what they do, what they stand for.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean, you and we are on the board for the Walla Walla Gold Star Family.
And by the way,
Memorial.
point that out, please.
Yes.
Explain that.
This is, we are in the process of constructing a memorial to Gold Star families. And of course, Gold Star families, I buried some of their relatives in Arlington Cemetery. Gold Star family is a person who has lost their loved one while on active duty. It could be peacetime, it could be war. We are in the process of putting this here in Walla Walla so that we are affirming those Gold Star families and remembering. I think I've told you this before, but a great man once said that the country that has forgotten those who have defended her will soon herself be forgotten. I would say the country that forgets those who defended her and their families will soon be forgotten. So that's why we're doing this.
Yes, yes. Well said, and a hearty amen to that, Gil. Hearty amen. Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for this time, for this interview. There will be a number of people that's going to enjoy this very much. You did a great job. So thank you again, Gil.
Thank you for
all your
taking the time.
service.
Thank you very much.